because before someone decides to invest, he must do a background or a research or an investigation in the specific industry that he wants to invest in. It could be in the manufacturing industry, it could be in the industry or a financial industry which provides financial services. It could be in a construction industry. They have different industries and they have their different features or characteristics. At the same time, they have their different risks and returns. So before an investor wants to invest in a specific industry, first of all, you have to do what we call industry analysis. He must understand the industry in which he or are going to invest in, and probably analyze it, the risks which are involved in that industry, the performance of that industry in the economy, and also other constraints, or rather the barriers in that industry. So industry analysis is a type of investment research. So it's a type of investment research that begins with focusing on the status of an industry or industrial sector. So it is an investment research stroke investigation that focuses on the industry or the industrial sector. This is an investment research or investigation that focuses on the industry or the industrial sector that the investor wants to invest in. So it's very important for company analysis because it provides a framework for understanding the firm. So you first of all, you understand the firm and the operating forces around that sector. So after you have, and you have, as you have said that we have different, before you do a company analysis and before you decide to invest in a certain company, now you are doing the industry analysis. We have different industries. We have manufacturing industries. We have energy firms which are in the energy industry, which they deal with petroleum. They can be refining the production of petroleum and other energy equipment. It could be a service that, an industry that offers services like hostels and restaurants and hotels. So that's the caterings. It could be an industry that offers other services like automotive. It could be an industry that deals with the consumable products like food, beverages, other personal care products, and also even tobacco. Also, it could be an industry that, as we said, it could be an industry that deals with the processing of materials. It could be building materials, it could be chemicals, it could be metals and minerals. We have other industries which are involved in the services of financial services like banking, insurance, real estate. We have what we call asset management, wealth management, and also we have others like the brokerage firm. We have other industries which are playing the field of health. So we have said we have energy, we have manufacturing, financial, it could be in the health sector. They could be involved with the production of medicines, supply of medicines, and other pharmaceutical products. It also would be other services which are involved in consultation on the healthy issues. And we have some other firm. It could be a technological firm, technology. So it could be a technology firm which deals with computers, software. It could be dealing with semiconductors. It would be dealing with internet services, provision of internet services. It could be dealing with other electronic equipment, other entertainment, also all things which, or rather all services which are under telecommunications, all of them, they fall under technology. So again, the communication firms include the wired and the wireless services providers. In our case, we know that. So there are factors that affect the sensitivity of a company to the business circle and reduces the limitation of the industry and company description as growth, defensive, or cyclic. So you have different factors that affect the company. First of all, we have a cyclic firm, what we call number one, a cyclical firm. So this is a firm whose earnings are highly dependent on the stage of the business cycle. Earnings are highly dependent on the business cycle. Again, we have different types of a business cycle. These firms have high earnings, volatility, and high operating leverage. So they are associated with very high risks, So there's high risks in this firm. So, and their products are often very expensive and they are not necessities whose purchases can be delayed until and the economy improves. So expensive products and they are non-necessities. Someone can decide not to do or to buy them at the moment until the economy maybe stabilizes. Examples of a cyclic industry include basic materials and processing, consumer, discretionary, energy, financial services, industrial and producer durables, and technology. So the firms which are operating in the energy sector, the technology, in the sector of technology, in the sector of processing other chemicals, they are always under this type of a firm because some of their products are very expensive and they are not really a necessity. Someone can do away with them. Another example of type of a firm is non-cyclical firm. So these are firms that produce goods and services for which demand is relatively stable over the business cycle. So the demand of the goods and the services which are produced by these firms, they are stable. So stable demand of goods and services. And the example of these firms which operate here is, you have an example of a firm which is in the health care and some other services which are in the telecommunications. So we have health care and other services in telecommunication. other firms in the telecommunication. So non-cyclical firms can further be separated into stable or growth industries. Now we find that the defensive industries. So before I take so this one, they can be either separated into stable or a growth, and they can also be, they can be a little bit unstable. Now it depends with the way the economy is, because industry analysis, it rather starts with the macroeconomic factors before it narrows down to the company analysis. So another example of a firm, we have what we call the defensive firm. The defensive industries, so number 3 we have defensive firms. So you find that defensive industries are those that are least affected by the stage of the business cycle. So they are least affected, the least affected by the business cycle. They are least affected by the stage of the business cycle, and they may include the utilities, other consumables like food. So they include utilities and other consumables like food products. Food products. So since they more entail of now some of the necessities, these are commodities that are needed in our daily basis. So a company which or a firm which operates in this industry, it is least affected by the business or the stage of the business cycle, and it produces some of the consumables like food products, milk, bread, and other utilities. It is in the defensive, or it's classified as a defensive firm. So when doing company or industry analysis, sometimes people take the approach which is called the peer group. The peer group approach, whereby a peer group is, first of all, from the word peer is a set of a group. It could be a group, people of the same age, they form the same peer. So a peer group is a set of similar companies, and an analyst will use for the evaluation and a comparison. So an analyst looks at a group of companies which operate in the same industry, or they provide the same services. It looks at them and it does evaluation and makes a comparison on the performance of those industries. Makes a comparison on the performance of those industries. So peer group will consist of companies with similar business activities, demand drivers, cost structures, and availability of capital. So when doing a peer group analysis, you look at the business activities, they must be of the same. You must analyze the demand forces or the demand drivers. So business activities, we have business activities, Then forces that affect demand, so we call them demand drivers, availability of capital, so we have availability of capital. Then we will have what we call the cost structure drivers, the cost structure of those companies. Those are areas which, when an analyst is taking the approach or using a peer group approach in evaluation of the industry, it looks at the business activities of the company, the demand forces, availability of capital, and the cost structure of a company. You find that every company has different cost structures. Some of them, they want to be the cost leadership. Some of them, they want to have that penetrating cost, or when it comes to the pricing of their products. So those are the factors he or she must look at. So when an analyst is using the form of a peer group approach to analyze the company, these are the steps which he must follow. First of all, he will use what we call commercial classification providers to determine which firms are in the same industry. As I said earlier, the peer group is you group together companies which are operating in the same industry. So number one, you must classify the companies based on the activities. That's now they must have the same, operate in the same industry. So operate in the same industry. They must operate in the same industry so that you can make your comparison. And then you must examine the annual reports or the annual financial reports. And then to see if they are identify other competitors. So you must look at annual reports and check for their key competitors. Check for key competitors. Then after that, you must again examine the competitors' annual reports. So examine annual reports of the competitors, annual report, because now these are the competitors which you identified in the second point, where you checked for their competitors. After you are able to determine their competitors, and then you examine now the annual reports of those competitors. Annual reports of those competitors. And then you used the industry trade publication to identify the competitors. Now use industry trade applications to identify competitors. You find that when you are operating in the same industry, there is those publications which are provided by the same industry regulator. Now from there you can also identify competitors from those trade publication of a specific industry. And then you need to confirm the comparable firms have similar sources of sales and earnings. You confirm the comparable firms have similar source of sales and earnings. they have a similar source of demand and a similar geographical markets. So you confirm they have the same source of sale, same source of earnings, and also they operate in the same geographical area. You find that if they don't have or they are not operating in the same geographical area, some factors may, or some of the enablers which are in one geographical area, it could be missing in the other geographical area, or the other way around. Even the regulations which are here in this country where they are operating, probably they are not the same regulations and provisions in the other nation. So they must be operating from the same geographical area for you to come up with a proper comparison and analysis. Comparison and analysis. And then now, after doing this, now you need to adjust your financial statements for non-financial companies for any financial subsidiary data they include. So you need to adjust your financial statements. Adjust your financial statements so that they conform to your findings on all this process of peer group approach. So you have some principles of strategic analysis of an industry. Some of the principles of strategic analysis of an industry. Principles of strategic analysis of an industry. Principles of strategic analysis of an industry. Here, we are going to look at the principles which are provided by a person or a scholar we call Michael Porter. So, the markets differ in profitability because of differences in the economic fundamentals, industry structure, and degree of competition. You find that some industries are more profitable than the other companies or than industries. The profitability of one industry could not be really the same as compared to another industry. Now, the profitabilities of different companies or the profitability of a company differs from another company because of the economic fundamentals, because of how the economy it is at the moment, the stability of the economy, and the performance of the economy. Another factor which may include or may affect the profitability of an industry compared to another industry is the industry structure. You find that different industries have different structures. Not the structure of a company operating in the industrial, in the financial sector, is not the same structure for the company that is operating in manufacturing and processing of products. They have different structures. So those structures also affect the profitability of the industry. Another one is the degree of competition. The degree of competition. when one industry has different or rather many participants, then the competition is very high. And when the competition is very high, you find out that the profit is decreased, or rather the profits are shared between those different participants in that industry. So after looking at those issues, this scholar was able to identify some 5 factors which a person really needs to take into consideration when he's taking an analysis for an industry. Number 1 is the rivalry among the competitors. Number 1, the rivalry among the competitors. We say that competition is one of the factor that affects the profitability. So now, when from here we are able to find our first point or factor, which is the rivalry of among the existing competitors. So the rivalry among existing competitors increases when many firms of relatively equal size compete within an industry. So you will find that when many firms of the same or are almost of the same size compete within the industry, then the rivalry within or among those firms increases. So when the rivalry among existing competitors increases, we have slow growth of those firms because they share or they compete for the market share which is available. So when there is high rivalry among existing competitors, first of all, there's slow growth. Because all these companies, they are almost of the same size and they are competing almost on a fair ground. So you find that the growth will be slow because they are tend to share. This is because they share or they have what we call, they fight for the market share which exists. Every company gets a share of that company. So the growth of that company is very small. And then at the same time, you find that there is very high fixed cost. There's a very high fixed cost in the production, very high fixed cost, high fixed cost, very high fixed cost. But again, because they are competing with other firms, now we have a reduced or the price of their products decrease in the price. Decrease in the price. Our decrease in the price. Another factor that was identified, number 2, we call the threat of new entrants. The threat of new entrants to the business. The threat of new entrants. So you find that industries have very significant barriers to entry. Some of them is they may require large capital outlays for you to invest in that specific industry. Like for example, in the financial industry, for a person, for example, to open a bank or even a microfinance, he really needs large capital to operate. So when the company or when the industry, as for example, the one which requires large capital for a person to operate. So if the person does not have the capital, or if it's like it curtails other people from participating in that industry. You find that the existing farms, they will always make profits. So the existing farms, they make profit because other farms or other investors cannot get into the business simply because there is high requirements for you to enter into that business. For example, is the finance sector, also in the industry of oil and energy, they always need very high capital outlays for operation and also even setting up of those machines and premises. So you find that for those companies which have a threat of new entrants, they have less competition. They have less competition. So, and then an analyst should identify factors that discourage new entrants. As we said, some of those factors would be the large capital which is required for one to get into the business. So another factor, number 3, is what we call the threat of substitute products. The threat of substitute products. So you find that as substitute products limit the profit potential of an industry because they limit the price firms or they limit the price that the firms can charge by increasing the elasticity of demand. So you find that the products, when the products which you can substitute them with a different product, they limit the profit potential of an industry simply because a firm which produces a specific product which can be substituted by another product, it might not have the luxury of increasing the price because the other products will be, or the other producer will be able to sell out its product which are at a very low price. So that when an industry has a lot of products which can be substituted with other products, you find that the profit of that industry, they are very low because you cannot increase the price because at a certain over a certain time, because there is a substitute of the same product, someone can get them cheaper at a different farm. And then another product is another factor which was identified by Michael is what we call the bargaining power. The bargaining power. Bargaining power of buyers. The bargaining power of buyers. So buyers' ability to bargain for low prices or higher quality influences the industry profitability. In bargaining by government and ever large health care providers have put downward pressures even on the patented drugs, for example. So we find when the buyers or the consumers have a bargaining ability, that is the ability to bargain for lower prices or higher quality, they influence the performance and the profitability of a company. So if the buyers or the consumers, they bargain for lower prices, And because of the powers which they have, so you find that the profitability of the industry will go down because the buyers will want to buy the product at a very price. So the profitability of that company will decrease. Another point is the bargaining power of suppliers. Number 5, we have what we call the bargaining power of suppliers. So we find that a supplier's ability to raise prices or limit supply influence the industry profitability. So we find that the suppliers are very powerful if they are just a few of them and their products are scarce. For example, of the a farm which has a very high bargaining power and which is a supplier is Microsoft. Their services or their products are very scarce, and the participants in that industry, they are very few. So when they are very few, they have the power to influence the profitability of the industry, because probably they would bargain for an higher price or an higher supplying price of their products. So these are the factors which are the principles of strategic analysis of an industry as identified by Michael Porter. He says that first of all, you must, or when there is a rivalry among existing competitors, there is slow growth of that industry or a firm in that industry, because they share the existing market share. And then you find that because of this, probably they have high fixed price cost, and there is a decrease in the price because the company already has existing competitors who are many and they want to have a share of that market. So probably they will have the employ a technique of having their prices at a lower price, their products at a lower price, you get more sales. And then the second one, you said that the threat of new entrants. This could be factors like economies of scale and large capital. So when you are required to have a initial capital, which is very huge for you to enter into the business, and probably you don't have it, so it means that most persons are not going to participate in that kind of business. And by doing so, the existing participants will have, or their profitability will increase because they don't have more, or they don't have competitors. We said the threat of substitute products and the bargaining power of a buyer. The buyers will always bargain for a lower price. So if they have that power as buyers or as consumers, and they bargain for the low price, the profitability of the company probably is going to reduce. And also you have the bargaining power of suppliers. This is when the suppliers are very few and their products are very scarce. You cannot find them anywhere. So when they are scarce, their products are scarce and the suppliers are very few, and then they have an higher bargaining power. This would influence or rather affect the profitability of a company. Example we said is Microsoft, which is their services, they are very unique, and the participants are very few. So let us look at the industry life cycle. The industry life cycle. The life cycle of an industry. Industry life cycle. The life cycle of an industry. I will draw this diagram, then we will explain on it. That is the graph, and this time the horizontal axis represents time, and the vertical axis represents the industry sales. And here we have the what we call embryonic stage, and here we have what we call the growth. Then we have shake out. You have mature. Then you have declining. So this is the industry life cycle. This is the industry life cycle. You have the first stage is the embryonic stage. This is the very early stage of the industry. Then the growth, when the company says starts to increase. Then we have the shake out. Then the mature, when the company has fully grown. And then you have the declining, when the sales of that company start to go down. When the sales of that company decide to go down. So what happens in the embryonic stage or in the first stage? So in the embryonic stage, what happens here? Number one, you find that this is when the company or the industry it's in its initial stages. And then you find that it's very slow growth. There is very slow growth. Very slow growth because probably the customers are not familiar with your products or even your existence in that industry. The company or the customers are not familiar with your products or even your existence, because for a company to grow, it must have customers. The customers are the people who are going to give you sales. And when your sales grow, your company also grows. But when you are at your initial stages, there is slow growth because the customers, they really don't know your products or even your existence. And then at the same time, there is high prices. There is high prices of their products or their services because the volume necessary for the economies of scale has not been reached. This is because the volumes needed necessary for the economies of scale, they have not reached. They are very small. Thirdly, it requires large investment capital, or rather large investment is required for you to start to operate. There's large investment required, and at the same time, there is very high risk of failure. High risk of failure. There is very high risk of failure at this stage. probably because there's other competitors in the company and your sales are very small. So if a company does not fail is at the embryonic stage, it will proceed to the second stage, which is called the growth stage. So the second stage is the growth stage. And at this stage, there's now the company's products, they have been familiar with the people. The existence of the company or the firm is known to other people. And probably now the sales of that company, because the customers have been able to understand their products, so there will be rapid growth. That will be what we call rapid growth. It's rapid growth because the customers have been able to discover their products and their existence or their operational existence has also been known to other customers. At the same time, now at this stage, because the company is growing and it has been able to attract its own customers, so you find that there is limited competitive pressures. So there is limited competitive pressures, limited competitive pressures, limited competitive pressures. Again, now, remember in the first stage, we said their prices were very high because the volume, their production volume was not necessary to give them the what we call the economies of scale. But now, because they have been able to gain their market, the volume production is going high, then we have their prices will fall down. So the falling, there is also falling in prices. Falling on prices of their commodities. Now, because they are making sales, because of their customers, so there's profitability increases. So there's increase in profitability. There's increase in profitability because they have been able to attract their own customers, and also they are making more sales because their prices are a bit lower. So after, when a company has this kind of rapid growth, enjoying the economies of scale now, it has what we call limited competitive pressures. It will now proceed to what we call the shakeout stage, which is characterized with the following features. Like now at this stage, growth will kind of decline, or it will be have a slow growth. The rate at which it was growing at this, it will reduce. There will be growth, but it will be at a slightly small rate. So at the shakeout stage, the company growth will start to decrease. So number 3, we have what we call the shakeout stage. And we have seen at this stage, the growth of the company or of that firm will start to slow down. And then there will be very intense competition. And then there will be increased industry overcapacity. Now, because there's very high competition, then also the profitability of that company will start to decrease, or there will be decline in the profitability of the company. So you have said number 1, there is slow or their growth is slowed. And then there is increase in the competition. So, or what we call intense competition. Intense competition. Then, because of there is intense competition, their profit will decline. So, there is decline in profitability. There's a decline in profitability. At the same time, there is increase and there's an high chance of failure. First, there's high chance, so increased chances of failure. There is increased chances of failures. And then there is what we call the increased cost cutting. So because the companies, what we call increased cost cutting, increase cost cutting. Now, because the company is operating where there is very intense competition, you cannot survive in this kind of competition if your prices are very high and your competitors' prices are very low. So for you to survive in this kind of environment, you also need to cut the prices of your products so that you can also have sales. That's what we call now the cost cutting increases. And then the last, but not least, the fourth stage is the mature stage. Number 4, I want to call it the mature stage. Now, the mature stage of an industry, it is characterized with the following. Now, there is very slow growth at this industry. There is very slow growth. There is very slow growth. There is very slow growth because the market is saturated. Because the market is saturated and demand is ordered for replacement. And then there is high barriers to entry. There is very high barriers to entry. At the same time, there is the company that tries to do what we call consolidation. What we call consolidation. The company involves in what we call consolidation. And then there is stable pricing. There is now stable pricing. So that the company will try to avoid what we call the price wars with other firms. So there's stable pricing. Stable pricing of their products to avoid what we call the price wars with other firms operating in that field. Then at this time, you find that the company has what we call as they have again the market share. What you call superior firms gain market share. So for those companies which have or their superior operators in that field, they will have what we call, or they will gain more market share. Gain more market share because they have been able to build themselves. They have their superior operators. They have been able to have the trust of their customers, and probably their products are of high quality. So then when a company has those features, it can, or it rather acquires the market share, the larger market share of that, of that industry. And then the last stage is where we have the declining life cycle of a company. No, here there is negative growth. the company is not growing anymore, and there's a decline in the prices. And then there is consolidation. Consolidation is when we find that some firms come together. They do what we call M&A, mergers and acquisition. Is a form of a consolidation. So we find that some large companies exist, or I mean they exit the business, or they come together to consolidate with their other operators in the industry. So we have what we call the declining stage. Number